So, do you fancy developing a supergiant field or one of several 100 million barrel plus undeveloped oil and gas fields? Well, if you do, today's video is going to be very interesting for you. So, we're looking at Iraq. There is an ongoing licensing round, in fact, 2 rounds, and there's amazing opportunities, and that's what we're going to concentrate on today. This map showing you the satellite type image of Iraq. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the petroleum geology of Iraq in just 4 slides in about 3 minutes. So we're not going into great depth. So here in the northeast we have the Zagros thrust zone, and then we have the foal belt in front of that thrust zone, and you can see a lot of the established and discovered gas fields, oil fields are all in this Zagros foal belt. And then as we move out into the foreland and then eventually onto the stable platform, and we'll have a look at a cross section of this. And here's a sort of a stylized section. It's simplified and it's generalized, but it's running from southwest is on the left, northeast is on the right. And you can see this major décollement here, which is basically all the sediments have been pushed forward. There's been this compressional tectonic event. So we get these stacked imbricate slices overriding previous thrust slices. It's kind of like rocking up a carpet by pushing it from one end, but this is involving, faulting and shearing. And we even get some sort of extensional type faulting, these sort of antithetic faults that we see developed in some places. So note the overall tendency for anticlines to increase in amplitude and tightness with proximity to the thrust zone. So here we see very, very tight anticlines, here eroded, we're getting some box folds. But then as you go further away, we get these much lower relief, sort of simpler folds as we go out into the basin. So here's a stratigraphic column. This one is from the Kurdistan region up in northern Iraq, and we can see the oil fields and gas fields are highlighted there down the right-hand column. We can see that they range in age pretty much from Miocene all the way down to Triassic, with an abundance of the finds in the Tertiary and Cretaceous carbonates. In terms of source rocks, well, they range in age from Eocene to Upper Devonian, but there are sort of Silurian Ordovician source rocks elsewhere in the Middle East. Perhaps they're not present in Iraq, or perhaps they've not really been determined at this time. Anyway, that's the stratigraphy. Now, of course, when it comes to trove, what you'll get is not just one stratigraphy, but you'll get stratigraphic information right across the entire region. And here just showing a subset of some of the stratigraphic columns and information that we hold within our Trove database. Now, in terms of source rocks, here we're looking at a map of the Middle Jurassic Sargaloo source rock, showing the maturity levels. Now, this again is up in the Kurdistan region of North Iraq, and we can see here these are vitrinite reflectants, so it's actually varying here from the marginal maturity in just getting into the oil window here to reaching to the point where basically the Middle Jurassic here is well within the dry gas window and has just basically generated all the oil and gas that we're going to get from these source rocks. But that's just one example. Here's an extract. There is more than this, but that information you get on source rocks within the Trove for this region. It's not only Iraq. When we give this out, it's actually, we've got all the fields in Iraq, Turkey and Syria. We've got all sorts of information on infrastructure, structural geology, the seismic, geochemistry, licenses, companies, reserves, and information on specific wells. We also have in this region Iran, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman. In fact, we have every country on the planet. So if you want the sort of information you're seeing in this video, which is specifically for Iraq, be aware that you can get it for every country on the planet. So let's take a quick look at the Iraqi 4th licensing round. Now this took place back in 2012, and it was interesting that at that time there were no bids for any of these blocks here in the western part, and I think there was an expectation there would be $15 to $25 million signature bonuses assigned to these licenses. Nobody applied for them. However, we had Pakistan Petroleum going here for Block 8, Q8 Energy with the Turkish national company TPAO, and Dragon Oil going for Block 9. For Block 10, we had Lukoil and Inpex, and then Bashneft and what was Premier Oil. They've since backed out. So, I mean, here we've got Pakistan, Q8, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Russia, Japan, and at the time there was the UK. So a lot of global participation in the fourth round. Now, this is back in 2012, but there are also some very noticeable absentees. Pretty much the Americas not represented in any of these license awards. Then we come to the fifth licensing round. Now, this gets kind of a little bit confusing because the fifth licensing round was back in April 2018. Here's the blocks and the provinces that these were in. The awards, well, essentially there were only sort of 3 companies involved. Crescent Petroleum from the United Arab Emirates, Geojade Petroleum from China, and United Energy Group, also from China. None of the other blocks there received any bids. Now, if we fast forward to the current licensing round, the ongoing round, and that's the Iraq 5+ round, or that's what we're calling it, the 5+ round. And what you can see here, here's the blocks on offer, and we'll look at those on a map in just a minute, but there's a variety of fields and also areas that are being offered in the 5+ round. And then we've also got at the same time ongoing is the 6th round. Now, the 6th round features all of these blocks, and again, anticipated that very early in May, this round will close and bids will be submitted for the opportunities listed here. So this is the schedule of events in the 5+ and 6th licensing round, and you can see the submission of bids for the 5+ round and the 6th round, end April, start of May. This video is being recorded here on the 10th of April, so there's only 3 weeks left to really submit a bid on these blocks, and probably a bit too late for most companies. Now, this is the map that was put out by the Iraq authorities, and there are 30 blocks on offer. 16 of them are being offered in the 5+ round, so that's predominantly oil opportunities. And then in the 6th round, it's seen as being mainly gas, and there's 14 blocks being offered there. So we'll break those down and look at them in a little bit more detail. Just to say that 2 of the blocks are offered under a 20 to 25 year long development and production contract, a DPC, and the other 28 blocks are being offered under a 30 to 34 year long exploration, development and production contract, or an EDPC. So, kind of highlighting where these things are, you can see that the 5th round are these dark green blocks, and they're shown here. Predominantly, they are a series of fields, but occasionally we get these license areas here. And the 6th round blocks, well, they tend to be here on the western side of the country, and we'll have a look at one of those in particular in just a second. So in the 6th round, well, we can see that it does get a little bit confusing here. So, here's the blocks, the gassy blocks on the western platform there. There's also thought to be oil and gas potential in the orange blocks, and there are only 3 oil licenses that are in the 6th licensing round, 14 in total being offered. Now, if we have a look at some of those, here you can see those blocks highlighted. These are the blocks. The pink and these green blocks are all in the 6th round. So it is kind of slightly confusing, and the colour scheme's slightly more difficult to work out. They're quite subtle, the changes. Now, we can have a look at Khaleesi. This is a shallow opportunity. Here's the Khaleesi. This is a dip line and a strike line. For the strike line, here's the location of it. You can see it going from the southwest up to northeast. And we can see that here is the Khaleesi. This is the well here that actually is down as being a dry hole. But this is the block. It's going to be on this big high region here. And what you see in cross-section, a lot of vertical exaggeration in here, but you can see this is 3,000 meters, and we can see this is the 4 deep, and then as we come out and go west or southwest, we come onto this big plateau area here, and that's the Khaleesi well indicated at this point here. So this is the general geology. Now then, if we look specifically at the 5+ licensing round, 16 opportunities, and they're just shown here, so a little bit confusing, but we've got 16 offered in the 5+ round, some of which represent exploration blocks which were not awarded during the 5th licensing round, which was held back in 2018. And in addition, a number of projects distributed in the north, middle and southern parts of Iraq have been added into the 5+ round. So Some of the examples here, we'll just have a look at three of them: Alan, Pulkana, and the northern extension of the East Baghdad field. The first of those, Pulkana, this is in the 5th plus round. You can see this is our entry here from Trove. The age of the reservoirs in Pulkana, it's Miocene, Oligocene, and late Cretaceous. They're all carbonates. It's a 30 API oil. Reserves, well, we've seen different numbers quoted for Pulkana, ranging from as low as 10 million barrels of oil to as high as 145 million barrels. So quite a range of uncertainty there, depending on which source you reference. Our next example is from the East Baghdad supergiant oil field. Now, this is an enormous field. It's also in the 5+ round, and there's our Trove entry for it. You can see lots of information, seismic lines, cross sections, geoseismic sections, write-ups, descriptions of the geology, and also you can see tabulated data for it. Now, this field discovered back in 1958. It's believed to have 39 billion barrels of oil in place. The recovery factors we've seen around about 21%. Now, that's quite low. It is a sort of a heavier oil. It's 23 degrees API, and it's multiple reservoirs ranging in age from Miocene, Oligocene to late and early Cretaceous in age. Formations include the Jarib, the Euphrates, the Hartha, the Sadi, the Tanuma, the Kasib, the Mishrif, the Narum, and the Zubair. So lots and lots of different formations there, principally or mainly many carbonates. Now, to explain, this is only the northern extension of the East Baghdad field. So much of the field has been developed, but the northern extension really has not been fully developed. The next example that we look at is the Alan field. Again, this is in the 5+ licensing round. You see on the map here, it's right up in the north of Iraq, not too far away from the Turkish border. And this is our Trove entry, and you can see we've got lots of information on the Alan field. Discovered back in 1954. It's undeveloped. It's been known for 70 years, but has not been developed. Numbers: 270 million barrels of oil in place in Middle Jurassic and Late Triassic. That's the Sargaloo and the Kurachine reservoir formations. They're both carbonates, but this is another interesting, exciting opportunity, and just one of the examples that we pulled out just to show what we have about the field in our Trove database. The story wouldn't be complete unless we actually had a look at the infrastructure, and yes, indeed, there are issues. Now, the Kirkuk-Ceyhan pipeline, we can see here stretching across from Kirkuk into Turkey and then across to the Mediterranean coast here. Since 2003, this pipeline has been plagued by sabotage. The hope is that it will be reopened and we'll be able to export some 350,000 barrels of oil per day, but currently it is shut in. Back in 2013, Kurdistan built an alternative pipeline into Turkey, but the Iraqi government shut in the pipeline in 2023, citing treaty violations. And from the map here, you can see the various pipelines. This, at the time, the oil pipeline was under construction, and indeed, this red pipeline here, going from the northern end of the Kirkuk field all the way up to the Turkish border. We're not able to go into any greater detail in this video on infrastructure issues. Iraq needs more oil and gas, and we can see here, when we look at global oil production, we can see that the Middle East, highlighted here, this band in green in the middle here, this is looking at just oil production, and the figures are in millions of barrels per day. So the Middle East is a huge contributor to global oil production. When we actually look at it within the Middle East region, though, you can see Iraq highlighted here. When we look at Iraq on its own, you can see here that there's been a steady recovery since the 1991 low point, when it got as low as about 300,000 barrels of oil per day, to now in 2022, it's doing around about 4.5 million barrels of oil per day. The oil production is a great story. If we look at gas for the Middle East as a whole, you can see in terms of global gas production, it's become more and more significant. If we look within the Middle East, you can see that this tiny, tiny slither, that is the contribution from Iraq. So here is the history of gas production within Iraq, and you can see, again, there has been a recovery in the last couple of decades, but it's actually only doing 1 billion cubic feet of gas per day, and more gas is needed for domestic consumption. And really one of the hopes is in this round that it will deliver more gas. So in summary, the objectives stated in these the licensing round, the 5+ and the 6th licensing round, it's to maximize gas reserve and meet the growing needs of gas for power. There is huge potential in Iraq with exploration, undeveloped fields and partially developed fields that need to be further developed. So you can actually pick an area and pick a type of block which suits your corporate budget. The subsurface story is fantastic. I mean, we do understand quite a lot about the reservoirs and the accumulations. They're very, very large. There's a number of supergiants and giant oil fields, and that's probably the reason why some of these smaller fields, they just weren't material. When you've got multi-billion barrel oil fields, they're the ones that get developed first. You know, even 100 or 200 million barrel field is actually it was considered small beer in the past and wasn't developed. However, great data on some of these accumulations, several wells, they've been well appraised, they just haven't gone forward for development. Above ground risk is really beyond the scope of this video, but time is very, very short. However, if you sign up today by sending an email, we could get a Trove database delivered to you tomorrow, so we can turn it around very, very quickly if you can make the commitment. So if you are involved in promoting a licensing round for whatever country it is in the world, if you're a government regulator or a seismic company that've got lots of multi-client data, you may just have geological reports or offer services. It could be specialist surveys like looking at seeps or some sedimentology or gravity and magnetic data, whatever it might be. Get in touch with Trove News and we can put a video together and promote the licensing round. And our videos, they reach every company on the planet: geologists, geophysicists, reservoir engineers, new ventures personnel, managing directors. We have all sorts of people watching our channel, and this is where you can actually put out the information. If you've got a multi-million-dollar signature bonuses, our global video promotion, which was watched in every country by every company involved with oil and gas, it costs fractions of 1% of such bonuses, and it's far more cost effective than say doing a world tour and putting on special meetings in Houston or in London or in Singapore or wherever it might be. This way, the videos are always there, they're always available, they get talked about, they get shared around, and please share them around with your colleagues. If this only gets one extra bidder, that might bring in an additional signature bonus. So these videos, fantastic opportunity to spread the word about your license round. Thanks for watching. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you want, ring the bell. You'll find out next time we put a new video out. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back on our channel before too long. Bye for now.